Actually, a combat crew.
Okay. And which you are the one, I think you pointed out to me, you're second from the right in the standing.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
And then you said the only other crew member still alive is the guy who's sort of squatting at the bottom left.
Yes.
Okay. Now, do you remember their names?
Oh yeah, I remember them.
Can you
very
tell
well.
us who these guys were?
Pilot was Ted or Thaddeus Lukowicz.
And he's the one who's in the center bottom there?
The second one from the left at the bottom.
Okay. Okay. And do you remember the other guys?
Oh yeah, I remember them all because we met several times during
Reunion?
after the war.
Okay. And the guy on the bottom left that's still alive, what is his name?
Horace Dodd,
And he was, you said, a tail gunner.
tail gunner.
Okay. And he's still alive, and he lives near Las Vegas, you said.
No, near Atlanta.
Oh, I'm
South
sorry,
of
in Georgia.
Atlanta.
In Georgia. Okay. 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 So these guys came from all over the country then.
Yeah, the gunners came from like Florida, Georgia, one other one came, well, two from Florida.
Mm-hmm.
The engineer came from Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
The pilot was from New York. The co-pilot was from Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
The one bombardier was from California. I guess I don't know whether I missed anybody or not.
That's good. Okay.
But yeah, we were from all parts of the country.
And you first met these guys then in Massachusetts.
Yeah, Westover Field is
Okay.
where they brought the crew men together for the first time and assigned them as, from that point on, they were assigned as a crew.
Right. And that was, they pretty much stayed together then the whole time?
Pretty much,
Uh-huh.
yes. Pretty
Unless
much.
someone was sick on the day of a mission or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So can you tell us then, how did the crew get along? Was it pretty good?
Was as solid as you could get,
Good. No personality issues or anything?
not a one.
That's great. Because
Not a one.
we've interviewed
And,
where there were a lot of problems.
Not a one. It was the most solid group I've ever had the experience to meet and
Mm-hmm.
live with for that period of time.
Now, are you flying 17s or 24s?
B-24s.
Okay. Now, we've heard a lot of stories about, at least from pilots, because pilots of B-24s and pilots of B-17s, how difficult it was to steer, to fly the B-24
It was hard.
versus the B-17.
Yeah, because I've been in the right seat. I know.
Yeah. So what was the major issue of flying? What made it so difficult to fly?
There was more effort required to push the pedals
Mhm.
or pull the yoke back.
Okay.
It was a heavy airplane.
Yeah.
Had a lot of power,
Yeah.
but it didn't respond like some of the B-17s
Yeah.
responded
Yeah.
to the changes in course and so forth
Mhm.
that you might want to apply. And it took a lot of effort to land it.
Huh. Okay.
Landing was a real challenge on that airplane.
Huh.
It was a difficult plane to land, but it was a good airplane.
Yeah.
It was a good airplane.
Well, it had greater range than the 17, greater bomb load capacity
Went
than
faster.
the 17. Yeah.
Traveled faster.
Yeah. Now, okay, we'll get to this later on, whether you ever flew mixed missions with 17s or not. No, it was always just 24s or just 17s.
Right.
Okay. So then tell us about your crossing over from Massachusetts to Britain.
Mm.
Was that one hop, or did you have to refuel somewhere? Or?
We flew from Westover Field, Massachusetts to Langley Field, Virginia,
Okay.
and picked up a brand new airplane
Uh-huh.
that was coming from the factory.
Right.
And we were going to fly this plane to England.
Okay.
So we flew from Langley Field to Bangor, Maine.
Okay.
From Bangor, Maine to Goose Labrador,
Okay. Right.
Uh-huh. And from there to Reykjavik, Iceland,
Okay.
and from there to Prestwick, Scotland,
Okay.
and that got us into the British Isles. None of us had ever flown an airplane across the ocean.
Yeah. No, I imagine not.
That was a challenge.
Yeah.
And I accepted that challenge pretty well as the navigator.
Yeah, because you wouldn't be able to use any very few land points. You'd have to navigate off the stars.
We flew over the tip of Greenland,
Yeah.
and we had seen a video. I don't think they called them videos at that time, but we saw a video of what we would, if we had trouble with the airplane, to land in Greenland.
Uh-huh.
And it was a treacherous airfield there that you had to fly up a fjord,
Yeah.
and nobody really wanted to do that
Right.
unless absolutely necessary, and of course we never found it necessary. But we flew right to Reykjavik, Iceland.
Now, at each of these stops, did you have a day there, or did you just refuel and go on, or what did you do?
You refueled and maybe slept overnight and,
Okay.
and went on, yeah. We stayed, I think, 2 nights in Iceland. And that was because we were doing something to the plane. They were doing some mechanical work to prepare it for another flight.
Okay.
But that's the extent of it. I didn't see much of Iceland. I never got to the major city, other than being near it.
Mm-hmm.
Reykjavik was a couple miles away from the airfield. And so I really don't know much about Iceland, other than the fact I was there twice.
Mm-hmm. Now, what time of year was this that you were making the crossing?
I crossed over in August.
Okay, so it must have been a great deal, mostly light. Then if you were flying that far north, you had a lot of light.
It was light all night long
Yeah.
in Iceland. It didn't get dark, which is a little difficult for those that were stationed there.
Right,
don't know
I
how
guess.
I don't know how they accepted that over the years, if they stayed long enough. But once we got to Great Britain, why then we started training right away.
Mm-hmm. Now, where was your field? What field did you fly out of?
I flew out of a field just south of Norwich called Tibbenham.
Okay.
Tibenham, Tibbenham.
Okay. Have you been back since the war to see it?
Yes. I took my wife back,
Okay.
my daughter, son-in-law, and we went back, yes. So I gave them an opportunity to see where I was. And they have a memorial there for him. And the 8th Air Force has a large memorial up in Norwich,
Okay.
which is just about 15 miles north of where I was stationed. It's there
Okay.
today.
I haven't seen it. I haven't been to the big mill.
It'd be nice if you sometime go over
Yeah.
there.
Well, I've been to which one was it? Polbrook Airfield, which is where well, it's a long story. It's where the guy whose log we're looking at flew out of. But I haven't seen the U.S. Military Cemetery at Cambridge either. I know there's a lot of Air Corps guys buried there that that were wounded and managed to get back, but then died subsequently. And I've not seen that either, so I would like to do that.
No, there's a lot there that memorializes the 8th Air Force and all those crew members who lost their lives there.
Yeah.
Yes. My revisit, I can't remember the date now, but it wasn't, let's see, probably in the 90s or
Mhm.
the 80s, maybe.
Mhm.
My daughter was over there. She spent 3 years, or her husband spent 3 years in the, he was a civil engineer working for the Air Force.
Uh-huh.
He wasn't in the Air Force, but he was a civil engineer.
Okay.
And he worked at those air bases
Okay.
over there
Uh-huh.
for 3 years. And my daughter came over with, and 2 of her children were born in England.
Mhm. So that was a perfect time to visit then.
Yeah, so we did our visiting then. And I'm a golfer, by the way.
Okay.
So I got to play golf up at St. Andrews.
Oh, okay.
In Scotland.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And I had vacationed up there during the war for a week. They gave us a week off during our combat training, combat missions,
Mhm.
and I spent that in Scotland.
Were you playing golf then or not?
No,
Yeah, that's
not
so
during
that's a
the war.
later development.
When I went back to
Uh-huh.
revisit,
Yeah.
that's when I
Okay.
played golf.
So what was Tippenham like as a base? What were your facilities?
It was farmland.
Mm-hmm.
They sort of lend-lease, they took over the farms, but only while we were there.
Sure, yeah. There were a lot of those air bases in East Anglia, I know, that I've seen pictures of before and after, I mean,
That's exactly where I was,
Uh-huh.
East Anglia, yeah. That's where Tippenham was. But so were a lot of the other bomb
Yeah.
groups.
yeah.
And flying a mission out of there was touch and go, because we had mid-air crashes. Not that many, but they were very spectacular things,
Yeah, I'll bet,
And here you have hundreds and hundreds of airplanes flying out of an airfield. What we would do was fly a course
Mhm.
out of the field, climbing until we reached, say, about 10,000 feet altitude,
Uh-huh.
turned around and flew the same course back,
Huh.
so that when you got back, you were at 12 or 14,000 feet, and usually above the clouds.
Mm-hmm.
Flying out and coming back, a lot of times you were in clouds. But then we would fly what they called a buncher,
Mm-hmm.
which was nothing more than a radio station emitting a signal. And you would fly around that while you assembled
Okay.
and got your planes in position,
Uh-huh.
high right, low left, so on.
Uh-huh.
And then when your squadron was in there, you would get your group into it. So you might fly that thing for a half hour or 3/4 of an hour,
Huh.
flying around, assembling.
Mm-hmm.
And then when each group assembled and the leader gave the commitment to start out, then you went out in order of which you were given,
Mhm.
in the order of which you were determined to go out.
Mm-hmm.
But we would put up 1,000 airplanes, 1,000 bombers
Yeah.
on a mission.
Yeah. Now they'd be all B-24s or?
In my 2nd Air Division, yes.
Uh-huh.
Now, the 1st Air Division and the 3rd Air Division were B-17s. And they flew together also.
Mm-hmm.
They had the same characteristics, and they could fly wingtip to wingtip,
Mhm.
same as we had to fly. That was part of the training.
Yeah.
We flew very, very close formation, and that was for protection from the fighters
Mhm.
that you fought against over there. We were able to protect ourselves better that way, because when I first started flying missions, we didn't have fighter escort except to get us across the channel
Mm-hmm.
and partway over France
Mhm.
and Belgium and those places. The fighters couldn't follow us all the way to our bomber
Yeah, they didn't
mission,
have
and
the
that's
range.
when we were vulnerable.
Yeah. Now, what kind of fighter escorts did you have at that point? I know later you had the P-51s, but what did you have at this point? Do you remember?
We had P-38s, we had
47s?
P-47s, yeah, that's the Thunderbolt.
Right,
Yeah, we
yeah.
had those.
Did you have any Spitfire or Hawker
No.
Hurricane?
No,
So it was
they
all...
didn't,
They didn't have any range, really. Yeah.
and they weren't assigned to us.
Okay,
I didn't have them.
okay.
I didn't have them.
So tell us about...
The P-51s were really
Yeah.
what
Yeah,
saved our biscuit.
Yeah. right. Do you remember at what point in your tour over there the P-51 started to escort you?
Well, they came and they were escorting us without the extra tanks right from the end of 44, I guess.
Okay, now you said you got over in the summer then of 44, right?
That's when I first flew my first mission, was
Okay.
September of 1944.
Do you remember where that was, where you went?
Yeah, I got a record of
Oh, you got your logbook here?
I've
Okay.
got a
Wow.
perfect log. Yeah.
Wow. If I could get some pictures of that, that'd be great.
I kept the log. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. So how did you feel? What was the first mission like for you and for the crew? I mean, what was going through your mind?
In trepidation, you're always wondering what's going to happen. And
Right.
It was not a very difficult mission. It was a fairly easy mission, as they call it.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I didn't see any fighters on the first plane, enemy fighters.
Huh.
The only thing I saw was flak.
Uh-huh.
Flak was our biggest, thing that we had to worry about.
Yeah.
Was flak.
You can't do anything about it. I mean,
No, you
Yeah.
couldn't. And it was pretty deadly. I can show you some of the maps of how we flew in order to avoid a lot of the flak.
yeah, I've seen some of the maps where they would actually, in the briefing, would color out areas and say this is heavy flak area. So they try to send your mission through an area
Yeah.
minimal flak.
And
But
of course, the Germans were pretty good at moving things around
Sure,
on you,
yeah.
so that
yeah,
it didn't always work out that way.
right, right.
But nevertheless, it was better than nothing, of course.
Yeah.
And you just had to hope that the flak didn't hit you. That's
Right.
all. I mean,
Yeah.
you know what flak is.
Yeah.
You've talked to enough of us
Sure, it's
to know.
mostly 88s.
Yeah, it was nothing but shrapnel.
Yeah,
And they would shoot this stuff up, and you'd fly into it,
Yeah.
and it would ping on your airplane,
Yeah.
and maybe knock out an engine or something
Yeah.
like that.
Right.
And
Now,
that-
did your plane have a name? We know a lot of the crews, of course, painted names on the noses of their planes.
Yeah,
What was your plane?
Lucky Luke.
Lucky Luke. Do you have a picture of that plane?
I have a. No, I don't. No,
Okay.
I don't.
So was that your plane throughout all your missions then?
Not necessarily. No. Most of them.
Uh-huh.
If it got damaged, then we'd get a different plane, A lot of the damage was just to the fuselage, it would just put holes in it or tear holes in it.
Sure,
That kind
yeah.
of thing. From the flak.
Yeah.
As I said, that was our biggest problem, although fighters did take their toll.
Yeah. Did anybody on your crew ever get hurt?
Never got hurt.
No wounded at all, huh?
No wounded.
Wow, that is.
No wounded.
And everybody finished in the 25 missions.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
And of course, you must have realized how incredibly lucky you guys were.
Yeah, we all finished. In fact, as I was 28,
Yeah.
I was staying there. I stayed right till the end of the.
Now, do you remember some of the more horrendous missions? Can you remember?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about
one
that?
in particular.
Okay. What was that one?
We flew the day, or the 2 days before I flew my first mission.
Mm-hmm.
The group flew to Kassel, Kassel. I don't know whether you've ever heard
Yeah,
of that
yeah.
mission.
Yeah.
You may have heard of it.
Yeah. Tell us though.
If I can document it, it was a target there in Castle that I believe had munitions
Mm-hmm.
factories. We always went after, we didn't go after people.
Mm-hmm.
We went after the production
Right. Yeah.
for Germany.
Yeah.
That was our main strategic plan in the Air Force. Well, anyway, this mission, we had 30-some planes. I think it was 33. It could have been a couple more.
Mm-hmm.
That took off from our airfield and was going to Castle that day. And not sure who the blame was put on, but the target was selected incorrectly.
Mm.
So when we went on a bombing run,
Mm-hmm.
when the planes went on the bombing run,
Mm-hmm.
and had the wrong target, they got out of the regular bombs, what they called a bomb stream.
Okay.
So they were separated from it by a few miles, not much,
Mm-hmm.
but it took them out of the bomb stream so that they didn't have the protection that
Mm-hmm.
they would normally have if they stayed in the right bomb stream.
Mm-hmm.
And how the Germans knew that particular time that these planes would be vulnerable, which they were. And at that time, the Germans were trying out their jets,
Mhm.
the very first jets.
Mm-hmm.
This was probably one of the first days the jets were up. And with the Focke-Wulf 190 and the jets, they were flying in about 10 abreast,
Mm-hmm.
right at our group. And they wiped out